Before we start, I seriously need you to subscribe right now because what I'm about to tell you is going to frustrate you so badly you might actually throw your phone. The Zodiac Killer. And no, I'm not going to give you some polished, sanitized version where everything makes sense and justice prevails. Because it doesn't. This case is still unsolved. Still. After more than 50 years. And the reasons why are going to make you absolutely furious. So let's start with the basics. And I mean the absolute basics, because there's so much misinformation out there about this case that we need to clear the air first. The Zodiac Killer operated in Northern California, primarily around the San Francisco Bay Area, between 1968 and 1969. Confirmed victims? 5 dead. 2 survived. That's what we know for sure. But the Zodiac himself claimed 37 victims. 37. And we have no idea if that's true, if he was lying, or if there are bodies out there that were never connected to him. Here's what makes this case different from almost every other serial killer case you've heard about. The Zodiac didn't just kill people. He taunted the police. He sent letters to newspapers. He created ciphers, these coded messages that he demanded be published on the front page, or he'd kill more people. And the newspapers? They published them. Every single time. Gave him exactly what he wanted. Made him famous. Made him a household name. And that's the thing that's going to eat at you as we go through this. The Zodiac wanted attention. He craved it. He played the media and the police like a fiddle. And they let him. They gave him a platform. They turned him into this mysterious, almost romantic figure. The genius serial killer who was too smart to catch. Except, was he really that smart? Or did he just get lucky? Did the police just mess up that badly? Spoiler alert, it's probably both. December 20th, 1968. That's where this starts. Vallejo, California. A place called Lake Herman Road. It's a lover's lane. You know the type. Quiet, secluded, place where teenagers go to park and make out away from their parents. And on this night, 2 teenagers are there. David Faraday, 17 years old, and Betty Lou Jensen, 16. They're in David's station wagon. Just sitting there, talking, maybe kissing, doing normal teenage stuff. And someone pulls up behind them, gets out of their car, walks up to David's car, and shoots them. Both of them. Betty Lou tries to run. She gets about 30 feet from the car before she's shot 5 times in the back. David is shot in the head at point-blank range. A passing driver finds them around 11:15 p.m. Betty Lou is already dead. David dies on the way to the hospital. And the police have basically nothing. No witnesses who saw the killer. No clear motive. No evidence beyond the bullets. It's treated as a murder, obviously, but there's nothing that screams serial killer yet. It could be a robbery gone wrong, even though nothing was taken. Could be some random violence. Could be anything. Then, July 4th, 1969, 7 months later. About 4 miles from that first shooting. Blue Rock Springs Park in Vallejo. Another lover's lane. Another couple in a car. Michael Mageau, 19, and Darlene Farron, 22. They're parked there around midnight, and a car pulls up. Shines a bright light at them. Michael thinks it's a cop at first, but then the person gets out, walks up to their car, and just starts shooting. Through the window. Over and over. Michael is hit 4 times. Darlene is hit 9 times. The shooter walks away, comes back, shoots them both again, then leaves. Here's the thing, though. Michael survives. He's badly injured, but he survives. And he gives police a description of the shooter. Stocky, round face, light-colored hair. And he describes the gun. A 9mm semi-automatic. About 40 minutes after the shooting, someone calls the Vallejo Police Department. A man's voice. Calm. Eerily calm. He says, "I want to report a murder. If you go 1 mile east on Columbus Parkway, you will find kids in a brown car. They were shot with a 9mm Luger. I also killed those kids last year. Goodbye." And he hangs up. Just like that. Confesses to both murders. Gives them the location. Gives them the weapon type. And the police trace the call. It came from a payphone a few blocks from the Vallejo Police Department. A few blocks. This guy called from right under their noses. And by the time police get there, he's gone. So now the police know they have a serial killer. 2 attacks, same area, same MO. Couples in cars, shot at close range. No sexual assault, no robbery, no clear motive beyond the killing itself. This is someone who kills because they want to kill. And then, August 1st, 1969, the letters start arriving. 3 letters. 1 to the San Francisco Chronicle, 1 to the San Francisco Examiner, 1 to the Vallejo Times-Herald. All posted on the same day, all containing the same things. First, details about the murders that only the killer would know, the type of ammunition used, the positions of the bodies, things that hadn't been released to the public. So the police know these letters are real. They're from the actual killer. Second, each letter contains 1/3 of a cipher, a coded message, 408 symbols total across the 3 pieces. And the letter says, "This is the Zodiac speaking." First time that name is used. He names himself. And he demands that these ciphers be printed on the front page of each newspaper, or he'll go on a kill rampage and kill a dozen people. The newspapers publish them. All 3. Front page. Exactly what he wanted. And the public goes crazy. Amateur codebreakers start working on it. Professional cryptographers get involved. It becomes this massive public puzzle. And within a week, a couple named Donald and Betty Harden crack it. They solve the 408 cipher. You want to know what it says? Here's part of it. "I like killing people because it is so much fun. It is more fun than killing wild game in the forest, because man is the most dangerous animal of all." That's what this was about. He's telling everyone he kills for fun. That's it. No complex motive, no trauma, no revenge, just fun. And he goes on to say he's collecting slaves for the afterlife. Every person he kills will be his slave in paradise. This weird mix of ego and delusion and absolute disregard for human life. If you haven't subscribed yet, do it now. Because this is just the beginning, and it gets so much more frustrating from here. September 27th, 1969, Lake Berryessa, Napa County, about 30 miles from the previous attacks. This one's different. This one shows planning. This one shows how theatrical this guy is. Brian Hartnell and Cecilia Shepard. They're college students, spending a nice Saturday afternoon at the lake. They're on a small peninsula, having a picnic, enjoying the day. And this man approaches them. But here's where it gets weird. He's wearing a costume, a black executioner's hood with clip-on sunglasses over the eye holes. He's got a symbol on his chest, a white circle with a cross through it, the same symbol that will show up in his letters. And he's got a gun pointed at them. He tells them he's an escaped convict, says he needs their car and money. Brian tries to talk to him, calm him down, tells him they'll help. And the guy seems to calm down too, tells them to lie face down. He's going to tie them up, he says, just to give himself time to escape. Brian and Cecilia, they comply. What else can they do? He's got a gun, so they lie down. And he ties them up with clothesline, tight, really tight. Brian's trying to stay calm, trying to keep Cecilia calm. And then the man pulls out a knife, and he stabs them, both of them, over and over. Brian is stabbed 6 times in the back. Cecilia is stabbed 10 times in the back and abdomen. The attack is frenzied, vicious, and then he just stops, walks away, walks to Brian's car, pulls out a marker, and writes on the car door. He writes the dates of his previous attacks, writes "by knife" for this one, signs it with that symbol, the circle with the cross, and then he calls the police from a payphone, reports the crime, tells them exactly where to find the victims, says, "I want to report a murder." No, a double murder. Except it's not a double murder. Brian survives, severely injured, traumatized, but alive. Cecilia dies 2 days later in the hospital. And Brian, he gives police an incredible amount of detail. He heard the man's voice, saw the costume, can describe his build, his mannerisms. He even noticed that the guy wasn't wearing his hood when he first approached, before putting it on. The police find footprints at the scene, size 10.5 wing walker boots. They find the payphone he used. They lift a palm print from it. A palm print? This is huge. This is actual physical evidence. This should be the break they need. But here's the problem. This is 1969. There's no national fingerprint database. There's no DNA testing. There's no way to run that palm print unless they have a suspect to compare it to. So it just sits there. Evidence that can't be used until they catch him. 2 weeks later, October 11th, 1969, San Francisco, Presidio Heights neighborhood. Saturday night, Paul Stein, 29 years old, cab driver. He picks up a fare around 9:30 p.m. A passenger wants to go to the Presidio Heights area. Normal fare, normal night. The passenger tells Paul to go to the intersection of Washington and Maple. They get there, and the passenger shoots Paul in the head. 1 shot, point blank. Paul dies instantly. And then the killer does something different. He tears off a piece of Paul's shirt, takes it with him. Then he gets out and walks away. But this time, there are witnesses. 3 teenagers across the street see it happen. They see the whole thing. They call the police immediately. Give a description. White male, early 40s, stocky build, reddish-brown hair, glasses. They watch him walk away, heading toward the Presidio. Police respond fast, really fast. Officers are in the area within minutes. And here's where it gets infuriating. A police officer sees a man matching the description walking down Cherry Street, walking calmly, just a few blocks from the crime scene, and the officer stops him, talks to him. The man says he saw someone suspicious running toward the Presidio, points the officer in that direction, and the officer lets him go. Just lets him walk away. Because there was a miscommunication on the radio. Dispatch said the suspect was a black male when the witnesses clearly said white male. So when this white guy is walking calmly down the street, the officer doesn't think it's him. Later, that officer will say he thinks that was the Zodiac. That he talked to the killer face to face and let him go because of a radio error. A radio error. That's how close they came to catching him. And then the letters start coming again. 3 days after Paul Stein's murder, the Chronicle gets another letter. And inside is a piece of Paul's shirt. Proof that the letter writer is the killer. And in the letter, he takes credit for the cab driver murder. Mocks the police. Says they could have caught him that night if they'd been more alert. He includes details about the killing that only the killer would know. And he threatens to shoot out the tires of a school bus and pick off the kiddies as they come bouncing out. Threatens to kill children now. The entire Bay Area goes into panic mode. More letters follow over the next few months. He sends more ciphers. Shorter ones this time. He sends pieces of Paul's shirt to prove the letters are real. He criticizes the police investigation. He makes demands, and the newspapers keep publishing everything. November 1969, he sends a 340-character cipher. It won't be solved for 51 years. 51 years! It was finally cracked in 2020 by a team of codebreakers using modern techniques and computers. You want to know what it said after all that time? I hope you are having lots of fun in trying to catch me. That wasn't me on the TV show, which brings up a point about me. I am not afraid of the gas chamber because it will send me to paradise all the sooner because I now have enough slaves to work for me. That's it. 51 years of mystery for another taunting message about his slaves in paradise and mocking the police. No confession, no clues to his identity, just ego. And that TV show he mentions? There was a call-in show where someone claiming to be the Zodiac called in, talked to a famous lawyer named Melvin Belly. The caller sounded scared, troubled, claimed he needed help. Belly tried to arrange a meeting. The caller never showed, and the police later determined it probably wasn't the real Zodiac, just someone pretending. But the real Zodiac watched that show and wanted everyone to know it wasn't him. Wanted to maintain his image. The attacks stop after Paul Stine. October 1969 is the last confirmed Zodiac murder, but the letters continue, sporadically, over the next few years. He claims more victims, says he's killed up to 37 people, but none of these claims can be verified. There are unsolved murders in the area that might be connected, or might not be. No one knows. Make sure you're subscribed at this point because I want you to hear about all the suspects, all the theories, all the rabbit holes this case has spawned. Because there are a lot, and most of them lead nowhere. So who was the Zodiac? That's the million-dollar question. And over the years, there have been hundreds of suspects. Hundreds. I'm going to tell you about the main ones, the ones that actually had some evidence behind them. Not the wild theories, not the attention seekers claiming their dead dad was the Zodiac. The actual suspects that police seriously considered. Arthur Lee Allen. This is the big one, the one everyone knows. If you've seen the movie Zodiac, you know this name. Allen was investigated more thoroughly than any other suspect. He was a convicted child molester, lived in Vallejo, worked at a hardware store. And the circumstantial evidence against him is pretty compelling. A friend of his told police that Allen talked about hunting people, said it would be fun, said he'd call himself Zodiac and use a specific symbol. This was before the murders started, before the letters, before the name was public. Allen owned the same type of weapon used in some of the killings. He had the same size boots as the prints found at Lake Berryessa. He resembled the composite sketches. He wore a Zodiac watch, the brand with that exact circle-cross symbol. When police searched his house, they found weapons, bomb-making materials, and a cipher on his wall. He had no solid alibi for any of the murders. Co-workers said he was weird, creepy, made disturbing comments. One person said Allen came to work with blood on his clothes the day after one of the murders. But here's the problem. No physical evidence. The palm print from the phone? Not a match. Handwriting from the letters? Not a match. A DNA sample taken in the early 2000s from one of the letters? Not a match. Every piece of hard physical evidence cleared him. So either Arthur Lee Allen was the unluckiest innocent man ever investigated, or he was extremely careful about not leaving evidence, or the physical evidence the police have isn't actually from the Zodiac. Maybe someone else handled those letters. Maybe the palm print at the phone wasn't from the killer. Maybe there's contamination or mistakes. Allen died in 1992 from kidney failure. Never charged. Never arrested for the Zodiac murders. Just a suspect. Forever a suspect. Then there's Lawrence Kane. This guy is interesting. He had brain damage from a car accident in 1962, which some people think might have triggered violent tendencies. He lived in the Bay Area. He worked in close proximity to where Darlene Ferrin worked. One witness said Darlene seemed afraid of someone who looked like Kane. Kane died in 2010. Never charged, never arrested. Just another name on a long list. Rick Marshall. This guy was looked at seriously for a while. He was a sailing enthusiast, and some of the Zodiac letters contained sailing references. He had a background in movies and film, and the Zodiac letters had movie references. He resembled the sketches. He died in 2007. Never charged. Then you've got Richard Gaikowski. He was investigated after a tip. He allegedly confessed to a friend while drunk. That friend waited decades to come forward. The handwriting supposedly matches. He's dead now, too. Never charged. Ross Sullivan worked at a library at one of the colleges where a victim went to school. He wore military boots similar to the prints found. He was hospitalized for mental illness around the time the Zodiac letters stopped. He's dead. Never charged. Earl Van Best Jr., his own son, came forward claiming his father was the Zodiac. Wrote a whole book about it. The evidence is thin. It's mostly based on the son's memories and interpretations. Van Best is dead. Was never seriously considered by police as a suspect. And then, in 2021, a team called the Case Breakers announced they'd identified the Zodiac as a man named Gary Francis Post. They claim to have forensic evidence, eyewitness testimony, decoded messages. The FBI and local police basically said, "Yeah, we're not confirming that." Post died in 2018. You see the pattern here? Everyone's dead. Every major suspect is dead. Arthur Lee Allen, Lawrence Kane, Rick Marshall, Richard Gaikowski, Ross Sullivan, Earl Van Best Jr., Gary Francis Post. All dead, and none of them were ever charged because there was never enough evidence. So if it wasn't any of them, who was it? Is the real Zodiac some guy who was never even on the suspect list? Some nobody who just got away with it and lived a normal life? That's entirely possible. Likely, even. Because here's the thing about the Zodiac investigation. It was a mess. An absolute mess. Multiple jurisdictions, Vallejo Police, San Francisco Police, Napa County Sheriff, California Highway Patrol. They all had different pieces of the investigation. They didn't share information well. They had different priorities. There was ego involved. Competition, territorial nonsense. The evidence that was collected was sometimes mishandled. Chain of custody issues. Contamination concerns. The technology to properly analyze some of the evidence didn't. The witnesses gave conflicting descriptions. The composite sketches don't all match each other. The 3 teenagers who saw Paul Stine's killer gave pretty consistent descriptions. Michael Mageau's description was different. Brian Hartnell couldn't see the face because of the hood. So what did the Zodiac actually look like? We don't really know. And the letters. Oh man, the letters. The Zodiac sent dozens of letters over the years. Or did he? Because here's the thing. After the first confirmed letters, there were tons of copycats. People claiming to be the Zodiac. Sending fake letters. And it's not always clear which letters are real and which are fake. The police and the newspapers tried to verify them by checking for details only the killer would know. But information leaks. Details get published. Copycats read the real letters and mimicked the style. So how many of those later letters are actually from the real Zodiac? We don't know. Maybe all of them. Maybe none of them. Maybe some. There's a letter from 1974 that some experts think is real. It claims responsibility for more murders. but others think it's a fake. There's just no way to know for sure. And the ciphers. 3 major ciphers were sent. The 408-character cipher solved in 1969, the 340-character cipher solved in 2020, and the 13-character cipher, which still hasn't been solved. Might never be solved. It might not even be a real cipher. It might just be random symbols designed to waste everyone's time. You know what's really frustrating? The Zodiac probably wasn't even that smart. Yeah, he created ciphers. But they're not sophisticated ciphers. The 408 was cracked by 2 teachers in a week using hand methods. The 340 took 51 years, but that's because it used a slightly more complex method, and no one could figure out the pattern without computers. He made mistakes. He left evidence. Palm prints, fingerprints, DNA, possibly. He was seen by multiple witnesses. He was potentially stopped by a police officer. He got lucky. That's what it comes down to. He got incredibly lucky that the investigation was fragmented, that the physical evidence couldn't be properly analyzed with 1960s technology, that none of the witnesses could definitively identify him. But the mythos built around him makes him seem like this criminal mastermind. The movies, the documentaries, the books. They all portray him as this genius who outwitted everyone. And maybe he was smart. But maybe he was just an opportunistic killer who struck during a specific time when law enforcement wasn't equipped to handle this kind of case. Let's talk about the victims for a minute, because they get lost in all of this. In all the cipher talk and suspect theories and police incompetence, we forget that real people died, teenagers, young adults, people with families and dreams and futures. Betty Lou Jensen was 16 years old. She was a cheerleader, honor student, her whole life ahead of her. First date with David Faraday. They were just sitting in a car. David Faraday was 17, wrestler, good student, excited about going to college, dead before he got the chance. Darlene Farron was 22. Mother of a young daughter. She'd been married twice, was working as a waitress, trying to build a life. Some people who knew her said she seemed scared in the weeks before her death. Said someone was following her. Was it the Zodiac? We don't know. She never got to tell her story. Michael Mageau survived, but he was only 19. Had to live with the trauma of that attack. The physical injuries, the psychological scars. He was shot 4 times, had to watch Darlene die, had to give police descriptions over and over, had to relive it constantly. Cecilia Shepard was 22, college student at Pacific Union College, smart, ambitious, planning to be a teacher. She survived the initial attack but died 2 days later. 2 days of pain and fear before succumbing to her injuries. Brian Hartnell survived. Was 20 years old at the time. Had to live with survivor's guilt. Had to live with the knowledge that he watched Cecilia die and couldn't stop it. Had to be the one who gave police the most detailed account of what the Zodiac looked like, sounded like, acted like. That's a heavy burden. Paul Stein was 29, working as a cab driver while he was working on his PhD at San Francisco State. He was married. He had goals. He was just driving his cab on a Saturday night. Wrong place, wrong time, wrong passenger. These are the confirmed victims, the ones we know about. But what about the others? The Zodiac claimed 37. Where are they? Did he just make that number up to seem more prolific? Or are there bodies out there, cases that were never connected? There are unsolved murders in the Bay Area from that time period that some people think might be Zodiac victims. Cherry Joe Bates in Riverside in 1966. The Zodiac sent letters taking credit, but the timeline is off. Most experts don't think this was him. Kathleen Johns claimed she was abducted by someone she later identified as the Zodiac in 1970. She escaped. Police investigated, but couldn't confirm her story was definitely Zodiac-related. Robert Domingos and Linda Edwards were killed at a beach in Santa Barbara in 1963. Some people think it might be an early Zodiac killing. Most don't. The point is, we don't know. We might never know. The Zodiac might have killed 5 people, or 37, or somewhere in between. There's no way to verify his claims, and that ambiguity is part of his legacy. Now let me tell you about the impact this case had, because it wasn't just about the murders. The Zodiac changed things. He changed how we think about serial killers. He changed how police investigate these cases. He changed media coverage of crime. Before the Zodiac, serial killers were relatively rare, at least in public consciousness. There had been others, obviously. Jack the Ripper, H.H. Holmes. But the Zodiac was different. He was interactive. He communicated with the public. He made it a game. He involved everyone. And the media ate it up. Every letter was front-page news. Every cipher was a public challenge. The newspapers were printing his words verbatim, giving him exactly what he wanted. And they knew it. They knew they were being manipulated. But they did it anyway because it sold papers. This created a template. Future killers saw how much attention the Zodiac got. They saw how famous he became. And some of them copied him, sent letters to newspapers, created their own symbols and names. The Zodiac showed them how to become notorious. Law enforcement had to adapt, too. They realized they needed better coordination between jurisdictions. They needed better systems for sharing information. They needed to take these kinds of cases seriously, right from the start. The FBI got more involved in serial killer cases after this. Profiling became a bigger tool, and the public became obsessed. The Zodiac spawned an entire industry of amateur investigators, people who dedicate their lives to trying to solve this case. Websites, forums, books, podcasts, everyone has a theory. Everyone thinks they've figured it out. Some of these amateur investigators have done impressive work. The team that cracked the 340 cipher in 2020, they were amateurs, spent years on it, used software they developed themselves, finally broke it. That's legitimately impressive. But there's also a dark side to this obsession. People harassing the families of suspects, people making wild accusations with no evidence, people claiming their relatives are the Zodiac to get attention or make money. It becomes exploitative. It becomes more about the puzzle than about the victims. And that's what the Zodiac wanted. He wanted to be famous. He wanted to be remembered. He wanted to be this enigmatic figure that people talk about forever. And we gave him exactly that. We're still talking about him 50-plus years later. We're still making movies and documentaries. We're still trying to solve his ciphers. He won. The real Zodiac, whoever he is probably dead by now. If he was in his 20s or 30s in 1969, he'd be in his 80s or 90s now. Dead or close to it. And he died without ever being caught, without ever facing consequences, without ever giving the families closure. Unless he's still alive somewhere, that's technically possible. Maybe he's in a nursing home somewhere, watching documentaries about himself, laughing at how everyone's wrong. Maybe he told someone on his deathbed. Maybe there's some confession letter sealed in a safe deposit box, somewhere set to be opened years from now. Or maybe he just died and took the secret with him. The case is still officially open. San Francisco PD, Vallejo PD, Napa County Sheriff, they all still maintain open investigations. They still accept tips. They still follow up on leads when they come in. They've tested and retested evidence with new technology. DNA analysis, digital enhancement of fingerprints, advanced handwriting analysis. Nothing definitive. Nothing that cracks the case. In recent years, genetic genealogy has solved a lot of cold cases. You know, the technique where they take DNA from a crime scene and upload it to genealogy websites to find family matches. That's how they caught the Golden State Killer. That's how they've solved dozens of other cases. Can't do that with the Zodiac because the DNA evidence is questionable. They have DNA from stamps on envelopes. But was it the Zodiac who licked those stamps? Or someone at the newspaper? Or some postal worker? The chain of custody isn't clear enough to be certain. And even if it is his DNA, it's been contaminated by decades of handling. The palm print from the payphone at Lake Berryessa? Same problem. Is it definitely from the killer or from someone else who used that phone? Without a suspect to compare it to, it's just a print in a database. The handwriting from the letters? Experts have analyzed it to death. Some say Arthur Lee Allen's handwriting matches. Others say it doesn't. Some think the Zodiac deliberately altered his handwriting. Others think different letters were written by different people. No consensus. So where does that leave us? With an unsolved case. With families who never got justice. With victims who deserve to be remembered as more than just Zodiac victims. With a killer who got away with it and probably died comfortable in his bed. And with a lesson. Multiple lessons, actually. About how we cover crime. About how we investigate. About how we can prevent this from happening again. Because here's the thing. The Zodiac was catchable. He left evidence. He was seen. He was potentially even stopped by police. The case was solvable, but it required coordination, resources, technology, and a bit of luck. They had some of those things, but not all of them. Not enough. Modern investigations are better. We have DNA databases. We have VICAP, the Violent Criminal Apprehension Program that tracks patterns across jurisdictions. We have better forensics. We have surveillance cameras everywhere. We have cell phone tracking. We have digital footprints. If the Zodiac tried his tricks today, he'd probably be caught. Probably. Not definitely, because criminals adapt too. But the odds would be against him in a way they weren't in 1969. Before I wrap this up, if you're still not subscribed, seriously, what are you doing? Hit that button. Because cases like this, we need to talk about them. We need to remember the victims. We need to learn from the failures. We need to keep pressure on law enforcement to solve cold cases. Betty Lou Jensen, David Faraday, Darlene Ferrin, Cecilia Shepard, Paul Stein. Say their names. Remember them. They weren't just victims. They were people. People who deserved to live full lives. People who were taken too soon by someone who wanted attention and got it. The Zodiac Killer is still unidentified, still at large, or more likely, still dead, and unidentified. The case is still open. There are still people working on it. Still people who hope that maybe, one day, there'll be a breakthrough. Maybe some new piece of evidence will surface. Maybe some deathbed confession. Maybe some relative of a suspect will come forward with information. Maybe advances in DNA technology will allow them to finally use that envelope DNA definitively. Maybe. But probably not. The reality is that this case will probably never be officially solved. It'll probably remain a mystery forever. An unsolved case file that gets passed from one generation of detectives to the next. A reminder that sometimes the bad guys do get away with it. Sometimes there is no closure. Sometimes there is no justice. And that's hard to accept. We want resolution. We want answers. We want the killer caught and punished. We want the families to have closure. We want the story to have an ending. But real life doesn't always work that way. So what do we do with that? We remember the victims. We support the families. We keep the case in the public consciousness, so that maybe, just maybe, someone out there knows something and will finally come forward. We learn from the investigative mistakes, so they're not repeated. We push for better resources for cold case investigations. And we don't romanticize the killer. We don't make him into this genius anti-hero. He was a coward who killed defenseless people and then bragged about it from the safety of anonymity. He was a murderer who got lucky and got away with it. That's all. Nothing impressive about that. Nothing admirable. The real heroes are the survivors who lived with their trauma and still helped police. The investigators who worked this case for decades with limited resources and outdated technology. The families who kept their loved ones' memories alive. The amateur code breakers who cracked those ciphers. The people who never gave up hope for justice. Subscribe if you haven't already. Share this if you think people need to hear it. And remember, true crime isn't entertainment. It's real people, real tragedy, real families still waiting for answers. The Zodiac Killer. 5 confirmed dead. 2 survivors. 30-plus victims claimed. Dozens of letters. Multiple ciphers. Hundreds of suspects. Thousands of man-hours. Millions of dollars spent. Over 50 years of investigation, and still unsolved. That's the reality. That's the story. No Hollywood ending. No brilliant detective work that saves the day. No satisfying conclusion. Just an open case file and families still waiting. I'll see you in the next one. Stay safe out there.